On a rainy day in Shanghai, Keir Starmer was taking in the sights. The first British Prime Minister to visit China for 8 years, using the city's annual Lantern Festival as the backdrop for bringing the UK-China relationship back into flower.
Oh, thank you very much.
But it's a tricky balancing act, reviving a stagnant economy back home without upsetting Washington, which is the UK's single biggest trading partner. Last night, Donald Trump lashed out. He was attending the premiere of his wife Melania's documentary, and one question provoked a flash of anger.
What do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well, but that's a big hurdle to go over when you get Canada.
Canada's Premier visited Beijing earlier this month. Mark Carney agreed to lower import duties on some Chinese electric cars.
We must work at speed and scale to find new partners, to diversify our trade and attract unprecedented levels of investment in our country.
Mr. Carney described his relationship with President Xi's China as more predictable than with the United States. His talks with China's leader prompted Mr. Trump to threaten Canada with tariffs of 100% if it agreed a wider trade deal with Beijing.
Great.
So Keir Starmer may well have expected a similar backlash, and talking to Channel 4 News' political editor, he didn't sound surprised.
Well, I saw the clip from Donald Trump. I think it's fair to say he was talking more about Canada than us.
A bit, but he was asked about you.
Hear me out. As close allies, we obviously discussed this trip with his team before we came. And I think I'm right in saying that Donald Trump is expected to visit himself.
So he's being a bit erratic.
April. It wouldn't be in our national interest to be the only country that sits with our head in the sand, not taking the opportunities that we've opened up by this visit.
The President of the People's Republic of China.
Mr. Trump last met President Xi in South Korea back in October. It was the prelude to talks on their own new trade deal set for April. The Americans are in effect warning their traditional allies not to go it alone on their own trade agreements with China, allowing Mr. Trump to negotiate first from a position of strength. Keir Starmer has spent much of the last year navigating the maze of how to keep the US president on side. He's trying to repair some of the damage caused by a trade war Mr. Trump started, and he's too much of a diplomat to call the US president a hypocrite, while China's foreign ministry spokesman is too much of a diplomat to take any public pleasure from any division between Britain and America.
中方愿同各国本着互利共赢的精神加强合作，造福各国人民。
After years of discord, Keir Starmer has begun repairing ties here. In return, the Chinese have lifted their travel ban on 6 British members of Parliament who'd accused China of genocide against the Uyghur minority. His critics back home say the Prime Minister is kowtowing, but even they would admit that China is too important to ignore. I'm now joined by Ben Bland, the director of the Asia Pacific programme at the think tank Chatham House. Mr. Bland, can we even call this a row? I mean, Mr. Trump has just said it's very dangerous for the UK to be cozying up on business deals with China.
I think it's pretty standard business for Donald Trump's daily utterances in interviews and on social media. So I think we shouldn't pay too much heed to it. The UK needs a foreign policy that's in our national interests, focused on the things that we want to achieve with all our partners around the world. And obviously, we need to listen to what the US says, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to follow all their advice, especially as it seems to change very frequently these days.
But Mr. Trump is going to Beijing himself in April, as Keir Starmer has pointed out. Doesn't the US president have a point that if individual countries negotiate their trade agreements before America does, then that weakens Mr. Trump's own negotiating position as effectively the leader of the free world?
That's rather hypocritical. Hypocrisy being, of course, a very important principle of international relations. We know that President Trump himself has been playing off all his allies against each other, trying to make them cut the best deals with him for his own benefit. And the US itself, as you're alluding to, is seeking to actually expand its economic relationships with China in certain areas, even while it's continuing to compete on other fronts. So I don't think that the UK is doing anything to undermine the US position. Their economy is far bigger than ours. And I think there's space for us to engage with China. I do think we need to be cautious in what we do with Beijing because of security concerns, because of concerns about China's competition with our economy and the fact that they have a very different outlook on the world. But I think we need to focus on our own concerns and managing those risks in British interests, not in US interests, which, as I said, under the current administration seem to change rather frequently.
But it does seem some sort of economic realignment is underway as countries realize how unpredictable President Trump is. Then President Xi of China looks quite predictable by comparison. I mean, is that part of Keir Starmer's calculation here?
China is definitely a very difficult partner. It pursues its own interests quite aggressively, but it is, as you're saying, quite predictable in how it's going to go about doing that, where we have a lot of volatility coming out of the US at the moment. From my perspective, we need to acknowledge that Donald Trump is the product of democratic elections in the US. And I think there's been a longer term shift in the US towards a more unilateral, transactional, deal-focused foreign policy and economic policy. I think that's going to continue after Trump. And in that environment, I think the UK certainly needs to expand its economic and other relationships, not just be reliant on the US. But that, I think, shouldn't mean that we turn all our attention to China either, with whom we have plenty of challenges as well. I think it's about getting balance in these relationships and making sure we're expanding partnerships with other countries.
And in Beijing itself, are they going to be delighted that there is an appearance of a split in the West, with Mr. Trump effectively slagging off the Canadians for trying to strike their own trade deal, taking a swipe at Keir Starmer too?
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate, to be fair. Both superpowers, both the US and China, are kind of obsessed with each other, right? And they tend to view their relationships with other countries partly through the lens of their own competition. And certainly, I think when China looks at the UK, it sees it as a subsidiary in this broader US alliance system. And anything they can do to throw stones into the spokes of the US alliance system, I think, is beneficial. But in this case, where it's the US president himself who seems to have taken aim at allies, I think that's certainly in their interest.
I suppose the real risk here is that if China thinks the West is divided, then it may invade, take back Taiwan in the belief that not everybody is going to rally to America's side in response.
I think when it comes to Taiwan, there are probably other calculations. I think they're much more focused on what the US would do, because it's only really the US that has forces forward deployed near Taiwan, in Japan and other Asian bases that Washington still operates to this day. It's only the US that has the military might really to oppose China on the Taiwan question.
But do you take my point that the Chinese may see some economic realignment with Britain, France, Canada, Germany? The German chancellor is going to Beijing quite soon, as some kind of ballast against what they might be about to do militarily?
I think it's not just about military, but it's about security more generally, economic power. It's about the balance of power in the world, I think, of which military power is only one part. China primarily is actually seeking to assert itself through its economic and technological powers. But sure, one of China's main objectives in the last decade has been to undermine this US alliance system, which gives the US a lot of power in the world. But I don't think it's just about the military. I think it's also about these economic questions and these technological questions, which at the end of the day, for most governments, are probably more important than the military and security questions, because when Keir Starmer or other leaders are thinking about what matters to their voters back home, it's going to be growth and jobs and prosperity questions rather than the military balance of power in the world.
Ben Bland, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks so much.